and welcome to another episode of Baggers Chat. My name is Mitch Pattinson. As always, we're joined by Ethan Duffy, and today we are reviewing our last match review for the season. Pretty funny to say that, but of course, to all the people who tuned in last night to the prelim final, Brisbane v Carlton. Unfortunately, we went down by 16 points. Final scores were Brisbane 11 goals, 13-79 to Carlton 9 goals, 9-63. Pretty raw. Of course, we're recording this at 10:45 on the Sunday morning. We'll try and release this either 6 p.m. tonight or even 9 a.m. the next morning. But Daft Boy, we'll get straight into it. How are you feeling?
Yeah, it's a bit of a, I'm not necessarily, like, obviously, we're flat currently, or, we're flat. I feel a little bit better this morning than I did after the game. I wasn't, I was flat after the game, but I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't heartbroken like last year's conclusion at last year's season. Much different conclusion, in my opinion. What can you say? We came out of the box and really hard. And how good was that feeling in the first quarter? It was probably one of the best quarters we've had this year, and we've had plenty of good quarters. It was a perfect quarter. That was the perfect quarter. The way we were set up behind the ball and that. But like you say on this first, dot point that we'll touch on, I just think, we're outclassed, and if we're outclassed and lose by 16 points, I think, that can be, that can hold us in good stead heading into, next season. And, Brisbane have been in this position four or five times in losing semi-finals and prelims. So they know how it feels completely. And I think it's just their time. It was kind of written in the stars, to be honest. The top two teams, probably the most two consistent teams in Collingwood and Brisbane, are going to play off in the grand final next weekend.
It's actually really like a really good way to put it, because with the whole Brisbane thing, with how well they've been throughout the whole season, and as like they got through that qualifying final, and now that they finally have that chance once again for a home preliminary final, how they were going to handle it. And I think it's a good way to put it, how it was kind of written in the stars, where you can see from one point of view where it was the arch rivals Collingwood v Carlton in a grand final, or the other point of view, it was just the most two consistent teams in the whole year. And I reckon it's pretty clear, because Melbourne and Port Adelaide were the other top four teams, but let's be real, Collingwood and Brisbane have both been the two best teams in the competition, and Brisbane haven't lost at the Gabba all year. We were quite excited to see how that would go, with the prospect of we could actually win, because they do get quite shaky in the final stages of the season. But to me, from what I saw from my point of view, I was seeing it more as Brisbane handled the pressure when we didn't have as much pressure as Brisbane did, but it just seemed like they wanted it so much more, and not like we didn't want it.
Yeah.
And the point that I also added on earlier was we just ran out of gas. We simply ran out of gas. Like that in the first quarter, I was up and about, but I'm like a little bit, because Brisbane also coming off a week off, and they were like, you kind of know with these prelim teams that get through to the prelim final without playing the semi-final, they get straight through. They always start a little bit slow. So it was always that second quarter for me. I had a feeling that we would start hot, but it was that second quarter. And as soon as they turn it around, and it just shows how great of a side Brisbane are. Like we are so not far off. Like, as you said, we lost by 16 points. Yeah. We lost by 16 points. We got smashed in that second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. Like, let's be real. And I was saying it to my partner, who I was, of course, watching it with. That wasn't fun either, because I was watching it with Roxy. She's a Brisbane supporter, and also her dad's a Brisbane supporter as well. Well, part Brisbane supporter. So that was quite funny. But I was kind of just saying, like, it was just simply, we were just outclassed in the end. It just got beaten by the better side. But initial thoughts, Daffy Boy, I know that we've just touched on 2 points then, but is there anything else that comes to your mind in terms of initial thoughts, whether there was just some players that were a little bit off, whether it's some Brisbane players that just were a little bit underrated from your point of view that pretty much dragged them over the line? What were your initial thoughts?
I'll just touch on, team selection. I thought our selection was quite good. in the way our defence held up, 79 against the Lions, they put away Port Adelaide 2 weeks ago, whose defence isn't good. So you can clearly see the two different defences and the way they hold up. And Vossi said at the start of the year, and especially when he first got to the club, he said, the first thing is adding different layers. And our defence last year, especially conceding goals, was not good. Like, it wasn't good at some stages. Transition wasn't good enough. And look at this year. Like, we've held even in our 6-game losing streak, we were holding teams to, 70, 80, and we were losing games, and 60, even 60, the loss to Melbourne. So I think defensively we've added that layer. I think for me, next year is just got to add some, we've still got to consider, like, people can say we've got the list. Of course we've got the list, but we've still got to add pieces. We've still got to add pieces. And for me, it's just some class, just a little bit of class, those little pickups, those, underrated pickups where you can get it for 300, 400K, free agents from a certain club, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you got to keep adding pieces, because look at Brisbane. They've continually added pieces every year, and they've added Dunkley, who, in my opinion, was the most important player yesterday. He had a job on Cripps and also had plenty of the ball. So, yeah, Patto, it's flat, but super proud of what they've done this year, because as a 21-year-old supporter, and this is the best season we've seen, and for sure we're not done. We're clearly not done. I think we can be pushing to the premiership for the next 3-4 years in the next period of time. So it's exciting, actually, thinking about that way. We're not doom and gloom heading into a season with question marks. We're heading into a season with more answers, finally.
Yeah, and halfway through the year, we were asked, and there were more questions than answers. Isn't it crazy how at the end of the season, how we've made it to the prelim final, and there's been more answers, and now we can go into next year a little bit more comfortable, knowing that last year we were heading into this year a little bit like, we aren't too sure, and then like halfway through the season we were like, oh shit, but now we know that we've kind of we didn't make the finals of 2022. This year we made a prelim. Next year we can dare to dream, because now we've got that finals experience that is so detrimental to the team. It is so important, and that's something that I still think is so underrated within AFL football, is when teams get AFL experience, and that simply was shown last night. Like, you can say as much as you can about how Carlton were off 2 great finals wins, but also Brisbane had more to play for. They simply did. And of course we would have loved to make a grand final. But last night, after that final siren went, I was more like comfort, where I'm just heading into next year. Yeah. What an opportunity. Like, you've got, I wouldn't be surprised if we go over 100,000 members at the start of next year. I think we're at 95 right now. But
we'll get there.
Yeah, so we will definitely get there. And we will head into round 1 against Richmond. That is a massive game, crucial, and that can really build us. That can really build our season. And it's a conversation where you don't want to say, oh yeah, I think we're going to be top 4. But as we've always said, why can't we?
We have to be.
We are in the prime position with this list, where the one thing that I was concerned about is just getting these guys finals experience. They've had that. They have had that. They have travelled over to Brisbane in probably the toughest circumstances in the AFL right now, travelling to Brisbane and playing Brisbane. Of course, last night it showed how great they are at the Gabba. We tried our best. We absolutely tried our heart out. There's no doubt about that. But at the end of the day, experience is so important. And we don't want to say, oh, like there's always next year, there's always next year. We've said enough of that, but simply there is next year.
Yeah.
Like, season 2024 is massive. And if we go back and not forwards, that's the concern. But we're going to wait till the season preview for next year, because we're not even going to talk about that. We're just going to try and celebrate the season as it was of 2023. But we'll touch on the backline first, boy. As we always do, we go through the backline, midfield, ruck, and forward. And you did touch on there about the selection, how you thought it was quite good. My point of view is there were too many role players dropped. That's just my simple opinion. And of course, in hindsight, you can look back and say, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. That's why we lost. That's not why we lost. But I think it
No.
was quite a big call, especially in a prelim final where semi-final and elimination final, you've done quite well. And the prelim final, you end up dropping 4 players, not injured, dropping 4 players. Pretty unbelievable. But of course, you had to bring in Harry Mackay and Jack Martin. And to also touch on the other inclusion, Jordan Boyd was pretty good last night as well. I reckon he was very much up there, and I think he very much held his own. But what were your thoughts on the backline, Daffy Boy? I know that there were some players that come to your mind, whether it's a Newey who got a very interesting eye poke, and it just shows how committed he is to the side. But also Jacob Wienering, and also to mention Caleb Marchbank before I transition to you, Daff. What were your thoughts on the backline?
No, they're really good. I thought defensively, I think Danaher and I seriously think their main forwards had no impact on the game inside 50. I thought Danaher was really good when he went up the ground, showing the smear, the sheer size of the Gabba. It's a disgrace, that size of the Gabba. Absolute fucking disgrace. Kicking, one kick can go to full forward. That's just, that just shows that's why they win games there, because they know how to play it. They know how to play that size of ground. And but yeah, just on defensively, I thought Weeders and Marchbank were massive. How many marks were they taking all game? Even when Brisbane's clearance and stoppage game was dominant from the second quarter onwards, I thought when they kept repelling inside 50, they were there, Wiedering and Marchbank. And it's another story to talk about Marchbank. I don't think it's touched on enough. The guy's had 784 different type of injuries the last, in his whole career, and he's only played 50 odd games.
Yeah.
And he's shown why in the last, however many weeks he's played, why we've kept him on the list. People always call for him being delisted, but I think his talent is, far greater than just delisting him. And I think this year was almost his last chance in terms of getting his fitness. Not form-wise, he's always been good when he's on the park, but consistency is good. And like the name you touched on before, Jordan Boyd, he can put his name down probably round 1 next year, because for me, the way he played, I don't know why he wasn't in earlier. He's that type of halfback where he's good defensively, but his ball use is arguably the best in our team. In our back half, fuck me, like, oh my God, like the guy hasn't played a game since the Port Adelaide game, comes into a prelim final and he's running amok at half back. So shout out to him, coming into prelims on easy. And I think for me, the one negative out of defence was I just think we were too slow in terms of ball movement out of our back half. I thought guys like Sardi needed to provide a bit more run in terms, even late in the game, like the Wiedering kick out where there's 4 minutes to go and he's going wide. And I just think we just went too negative. We were using the ball too negatively. I know that's forced upon by the structures of Brisbane in terms of, but Sardi's role is to break lines, and I understand he broke lines enough yet last night. You know what I mean? It's just that breakneck speed where off a kick out, he can take on the guy, the man on the mark, and go 50 metres, break that line and go over the top. You're at the Gabba, smaller ground. A Sard kick can probably hit centre forward from half back. So that was my negative with the defence. But as a whole, I think all year they've stood up well. And it's going to be, I think we still need, we've got Zach Williams to come into the side. It would have been very handy yesterday, in my opinion. And then this season, he's going to be a massive in for mine, because we haven't seen him in a really, really good side. Because he's missed a lot of games in the past 2 years. So hopefully he gets back on the park, and I think it's going to be a similar situation to the Marchbank, just get him on the park and he'd be raring to go.
Yeah. And like with Brisbane, so they, of course, scored 79 points, and that's very low for what they usually would score at Brisbane, and also a beautiful night for football. So you have to give credit where it's due, and I think the back line 100% did their role. So you touched on there about the marks, and Jacob Wiedering and Caleb Marchbank both had 8 marks each. So that's 16 together, which is massive, because other than that, there was Coleman who had 10 marks, Lester 9, Fletcher 8, Wilmot 8, and it was Marchie and Weeders. And then other than that, the next Carlton player to about McGovern, who had 5, was Harry Mackay at 6. So, and also Harry Mackay, he stood up tremendously as well. So we will touch on the forward line, of course, later on, but there was just players that, like Jordan, all of our inclusions were pretty, like, they were all good. And
Probably apart from, I thought, Jack Martin was okay. I thought he was a bit quiet, but yeah.
I think, I do agree. Where it's like Jack
Yeah.
Martin was like that little bit of, you just don't like, as we said, you have to give credit where it's due. And Brisbane's structure, that's why I think even with Weeder's with his kick out with about 3 minutes to go, that was purely Brisbane's structure. Because that camera angle, you can actually see how well structured they are. And he's pretty much his only option. I think it was Cottrell who was running on the wing. And I'm like, other than that, I'm like, that's probably what I would have done if I was in his position. Like, it's just it's so tough, and you can see that he's trying to create something different because you don't want to be predictable and go straight down the middle. But at least he's trying something different. And of course, it didn't work. But I don't know. Like there's two sides of Carlton supporters where you can say you're really proud, or you can say that was a chance that you gave up. And it's so hard because we haven't been in a prelim final since 2000. So it's I don't know. We are still rattled. We are still it's quite raw. But I know I think the backline was quite solid. But of course, David Boy will now move on to the midfield conversation. So I'll transition straight to you, mate. I know that there were a few players that stood up in that midfield, but probably maybe one, if I could really name, if we can really be honest. But I'll transition to you, mate. Midfield clash. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I think they were pretty, to be really nice about it, I thought after quarter time we're pretty pathetic in the midfield. I think that leads to a lot of I agree with the run out of gas for sure, but after quarter time, like, come on, man, like, we were barely putting together clearances and stoppages, and they were killing us, absolutely killing us out the middle. It was unbelievable. And you lose by 16 points. If you turn that around just a little bit, you probably go really close to winning the game. So, I think that's where it was won and lost, in my opinion. In the middle of the ground after quarter time, they fixed some things, Brisbane, and I think we just, I don't know, it was hard to watch. And in my opinion, if I was the coach, I would have brought on Matt Kennedy really quickly at halftime. I just think we needed something, energy. I don't care who went off. And in terms, it didn't have to be a mid. It could have been just something. We just needed something. But like you say, hindsight's a funny thing. But I just thought we were dominated at the clearance. Absolutely killed. Especially in that second quarter, we just let them get easy entries. It's not like, those clearances where they're scrap kicks to half forward. They're, kicks that hit the goal, top of the goal square. Lockie Neal kept doing his fake handball, and we kept getting faked by his handball in the middle of the ground, and then he'd get it inside 50. Credit to them. They're a really, really good midfield group. And I was quite let down by the mids performance. But there's one guy in particular that stood up once again, and I imagine he gets the coach's votes. And Sam Walsh, enormous again, just enormous. I think he ended up with 33 or 34 touches in the game, and he set up a lot of our goals, and he was still going till that final siren in that last quarter. He kind of sparked us in the middle again. I just think he's proven to us why he's an A-grade footballer, and playing like that in finals footy, he probably almost wins the best finals player in my opinion, because he's probably played the most finals. He might end up with the most votes, so he actually might get the best finals player, because it kind of works like that for teams who've kind of made a run from outside the top four, because they play more games. So that'll be interesting. But he'd be happy with how his season's ended, considering he missed a whole preseason and large chunks of games, really.
Yeah, well said. I think we have to touch on the midfield, and I think the only player that we can, as we mentioned, I think the only player that could really hold his head high in that midfield group was, of course, Sam Walsh. So we'll go through his stats very quickly. So Sam Walsh, 33 touches, as you've mentioned, 15 kicks, 18 handballs, 3 marks, 6 tackles again. Like, this guy's a tackle machine, and he doesn't get enough credit for that, because he's dominant in so many other aspects of his game. So, like, he gets 6 tackles. That's still a super game tackling wise, but he still gets 33 touches. But 14 contested possessions. That's still solid. Like, that's still a solid game. And as you said, I think it's when the game was in the balance in that last quarter, if more people got around Walshy, who knows what could have happened?
Mm.
And it's just like we ran out of gas, but there's a guy who's 20. How old is he? Yeah, 23. He's 23, and there's people who ran out of gas and Walshy didn't, and he's 23. So that doesn't make sense to me. How it's either people like Cripper, 13 touches in a prelim final, 2 massive goals though. So I think he kind of
I think there's a clear, like, for me, I think he's probably the one guy I could probably excuse. Like, his body's fucked. Like, let's be real. Let's be fucking real here. He's played through a final series. He had 28 last week with broken ribs. No fucking doubt he has broken ribs. He had a broken nose from the Melbourne game. Like, I agree, like 13 touches, but fuck me, like he's he battled hard yesterday. He just kept going. I know, like, I'm not trying to. I agree. Like 13, but like he's probably the one guy I excuse in my opinion. I just think his body's banged up. 3 big finals, and I'm just happy that he's pain that he went through. He finally got a bit of reward in this final series. That's what satisfies me about this season. Guys like Cripper and Walshies and Harrys and stuff like that finally get to see success after all the pain they go through. You always see the good stories in grand finals where players are injured and you go, oh, what a story, they've won the grand final and they'll have broken ribs in the grand final. But on the other end of things, there'd be North Melbourne players that would have had injuries all year playing through them, losing every week. So, and I imagine Cripps would have done that in his career plenty of times. So, yeah, shout out to Cripper, but agree, 13 touches, but banged up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not really saying like Cripper's playing a shit game. I just think like he was 13 touches that he did solid, and he still got 6 tackles. Like, once again, he equaled Walshy with tackles. And as you said beautifully then, I just think like he's banged up. The guy has tried his absolute heart out, and let's be real, like I'll be very surprised if he doesn't have broken ribs, because he's been working that padding ever since he came back into the side. So and it's the did you just hear that? No, sorry to the viewers. I'm still a little bit rambled at the moment, but for Cripper to have 13 touches in a prelim final, like you can't shit on that, because it's not like he didn't give effort. You have to give credit where we mentioned halfway through the episode, Josh Dunkley played a super game as well, and his role was Cripper. So and that's why I think his game was underrated, because he defended really well, trying to keep Cripper to 13 touches, but he also dominated. And what did he get in the end? I think he got 23 touches, and it was quite a low sort of disposal game. I think Walshy was so he had 33 at the top, and the next one was Josh Berry at 24.
Yeah,
Jared Berry. I called him Josh Berry, tappy boy. But, all right, so we will now move to the Ruck conversation. It's I think Big O, he got 38 hitouts. Pitto got 17, TDK 16, and of course Joey Danahill, who was a second Ruck, who had three hitouts. But it just shows how massive the Big O is, because he can play big Ruck minutes and dominate the game throughout the whole 4 quarters. But Dave Boy, what were your thoughts on the Ruck contest?
Yeah, I thought, in my opinion, Pitto killed him in the first quarter. I think that's what really led us to win the clearances. And it's a similar tale. I thought after quarter time, they definitely fixed things. And like you said, I thought McInerney was massive, especially in that second quarter. I think as a whole, Brisbane are really, really good at keeping the momentum away from you, in terms of when you get the ball forward or when there's a stoppage inside 50, like they just get a punch on it and it goes like 15, 20 meters. Like, how many times that happened?
Yeah.
Like it's just like, especially Andrews, and he had 10 touches, but I feel like his impact on the game was crucial because he had 11 spoils, and those spoils aren't going 5 meters. He's whacking them. They get out of D50 through a spoil. It's like when Wiedering and stuff like that, they do the similar thing, but it just kept happening. And then especially in the Ruck, like his hit outs, like when he knew Brisbane were on the momentum, he's hitting it forward. He's not going a little tappy. He's fucking hitting at 20 meters.
Yeah.
And what happens? Goals. because they know how to play, especially at that ground. And I think Collingwood's got their work cut out if he's on his game next weekend, Big O, because he's dominant and he kicked 2 goals. I think he's one of the most reliable set shots for a ruckman for sure. I think every week. I knew he was going to kick both the goals he was going to kick. He's got his routine down pat. But I thought, Pitto and TDK, I think, Pitto, once again, he's one of those kind of banged up types, in my opinion. I think his body's pretty much kept together by tape. And what did he end up with? 10 touches, 17 hit outs. Okay. Thought TDK was quiet. But, what can you say? I don't think we can say too much. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more ruck minutes for TDK next year. I think that's going to be an interesting topic because I think Pitto's definitely good enough to be the guy, but I think you've always got to evolve your team, and I think the outlook of our team will definitely change next year. Not too much, but it always tinker. It'll always tinker, and you never know when we might have another ruckman coming in. I have no idea, but it's just a matter of I think Teddy K needs the minutes in the ruck predominantly because I think he's going to be a superstar coming in next year, and like you said earlier in the episode, it's exciting. It's more excitement than being flat at the moment because 2024 Patto, round 1 when he's jumping up on Toby Nankervis, it's going to be a sight to see.
Yeah, I mean it will be exciting to do the season preview as well for my voice for of course like heading to next season, it's massive. And I think that season preview is going to be massive because we can really speak about how we try and get a guy like Zach Williams into this side. As you can probably already tell the viewers and listeners, you can already tell that this will be a little bit of a shorter episode. So we will move straight into the forward line. And then, of course, we'll touch on the best on ground. But, of course, we will also do a season review in a couple of weeks. So that's when we will recap probably in more depth this game, but also we'll go through the whole season. But Dave Boy, forward line, what were your thoughts? Because there were some names that stood up, but there's some other names who are pretty important in that forward line who didn't really do the same.
Yeah, it was a bit of a struggle up forward, and I think that game screamed out to me. I know we can talk about Owies and stuff like that, but I still think we just need that goal kicker. We just, you know what I mean? We've got those goal kicks up forward, but I feel like I was reading through Twitter today. You know what I mean? It's just those certain players who are depth as well. Those depth type of players that can come in and kick goals. Like we just need that type of forward. I know Motlop will be that type, and Owies has been great this year. Of course, I'm not bagging them, and I'm not bagging Jack Martin and Charlie because I know they get to kick goals and they've kicked plenty of winning scores, but. I think as in the finals, I think with Charlie down, our output going forward's been down, and that's the key issue in terms of other personnel. We've got to be able to kick goals, get on the scoreboard without guys firing. But yeah, I'll continue with Charlie, and yeah, it was disappointing. I think he'd be really disappointed with the way he's gone about it in the final series, but. People can have critics will continue to have a go at him for the next week. And I'll tell you right now, when we play the qualifying final at the MCG next season, no doubt in my mind we'll be top 4 next season. He'll be there fit and firing because he knows he's let him down a little bit up forward. I just thought his game, he's just out of the game. He worked hard. Once again, shout out to viewers and people on Twitter and stuff like that. I just love reading what people have to say because I agree with a lot of what people have to say in different perspectives. And it's the funny saying, work smarter, not harder. I felt like he worked harder, not smarter yesterday. I think he was working too hard to, you know what I mean? It was just like, he just wasn't getting anywhere. And it's just, I thought, shout out to Gardner. Fuck. Like he's played 3 games all year, including yesterday. And he had a really good game on him, shout out to him. But Charlie was a little bit down. And one name who I'm absolutely proud of yesterday, and it was Big H. Big H. He was the focal point of that forward line. I think he was the focal point.
Yeah.
In my opinion. I thought he was the one beating Harris Andrews in 1-on-1. I knew from the first free kick he got, I knew he was on. Because those Harry Mackay games is when his opponents can't keep him down. And his set shot routine was good yesterday. You know, I know the one he hit the post, but that's routine when he hit the post.
Yeah.
I was like, that's the most calm I've seen him heading into a goal. Like, it was actually a good looking kick. And he kicked another one about 2 minutes later with the same routine. So I think his mentality was good. And, you know, I was speaking to my mum about it before, and she said, I feel like he probably had confidence that we brought him in. We trust him. He's had a tough year, but our trust in him is giving him confidence. You know what I mean? Like, we're playing him. We weren't scared to play him due to past form or because we know how integral he is to this team. And shout out to him, because I think next year he'll have a big year. I don't think he'll let himself have a year that he did this year, and get back to Harry Mackay ways, and hopefully lead us to, you know, a grand final berth and a premiership next season. But other forwards I thought were quiet. In my opinion, I thought Motlop was quiet. Fogarty was okay, I thought. His pressure was good. And it was very surprising that he was the one that subbed off. But I just think, you know, Jesse's young. And he'll learn from that experience. And Patto, it's bittersweet. You know, all these names I've loved watching this season. So shout out to them, but plenty to improve on in a side that's looking pretty good.
Yeah, Matt, so much to improve on. And that's a really good way to put it, because there's so many players who can come into this side. And even to name a Jack Silvani, well, he could come into this side as well and be a lock in his best 22. So there's so many players that could come in, but there's also so many players that also could come out to maybe even this side out. And I think that's why the selection was a little bit interesting in my opinion. But as we always say, hindsight is a very funny thing. And look back and say, oh, well, we could have changed this, that. But of course, for actual selection before the game, you go with what the best team is to beat the Lions at the Gabba on the Saturday night. And that's something that we've done really well throughout the whole year. So, but of course, that is the forward line. That is the midfield, rucks and backline. But now we'll touch on the best on ground before we wrap up the episode. Might be quite clear, but also there might be a few other names that come to your mind, Daffy Boy. Who was your best on ground?
Yeah, best on ground for me was Sam Walsh. Simple as that. There's not much to say, is there? It's just his actions do the talking. And it's going to be really, really good to see how he plays next year, because I think it could be, you know, a medal type around his neck, and you know what type of medal that is. So the Brownlow medal, because with the preseason, if he plays every game, he'll be up there for sure. He's too good of a player to not be in that talk. And it's exciting. Get a preseason. Please stay fit. Touch wood while she's in the preseason. Don't wrap him in cotton wool, please. What, Bossy?
I think really good way to put it. But I think best on ground from my point of view, I think it's got to be Sam Walsh as well. But another name that we'll touch on also is Harry Mackay. I think he was the point of difference. I think we both had Harry Mackay as our point of difference last episode, and I think he was absolutely detrimental to this side. But yeah, I mean, of course, that was the review for the final time this year for a Carlton game, which is pretty unbelievable. But Daft Boy, before we wrap up the episode, is there anything else you would like to touch on?
No, it's been good this year, and I'd imagine Harrow, I just called you Harrow. Patto, shout out to Harrow. Enjoy. I've already spoken to him last night, but you know, it's been good, you know, being able to talk with someone about Carlton, because I know, you know, in previous, you know, years where I haven't done a podcast, you know, I always talk about Carlton anyway. So it's been good to, you know, speak to not just you, but also people who listen to us every week, and, you know, shout out to them. It's been a good ride this year, and I'd imagine you'd put something together in terms of a little bit. There'll be docos about this year. You know, there's been a turnaround this year, and although we didn't get the trophy, I think we can be proud of this team, and Bag of Shut will be fit and firing to go in season 2024, and we've still got the trade period and draft to go, so we'll definitely be doing stuff for that. So keep an eye out on that stuff. Yeah, extremely well said, Dave Boy. Very well wrapped up. I don't think I needed to say anything else. But
To all the viewers out there, all the listeners out there, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Every single content you see us on, make sure to give us some love. And to you, Death Boy, and to all the blue baggers out there, up the burgers!